everyone, and welcome to the Serenity Garden. Another little bunch of flowers that will add to your bouquets. Some perennials, some annuals, but I think you'll like these. So let's get started with the Astrantia. I know it's a funny word to say. It also goes by Masterwort. So either one will do. It is a perennial, non-aggressive. Gardeners love it because it goes in areas where just partial sun. So if you've got a couple shady areas that just get maybe the morning sun, this is a good one to plant. It has what I call like a pincushion type center, and you'll see these little flowerets here that we're going to start with. So your dies are, you'll get the flower die and you'll cut 2 of those. These little stamens will hold these flowerets, and you'll cut it twice. So there's one that's a little smaller and one that's larger, and then a roll-up one. And then the very interesting leaves that almost remind me a little bit of some of the other leaves we've done, but quite interesting. So let's get started. And I'm going to push these aside and start first with the little flowerets. Now you see I've already started coloring. There are enough in the dies to add 2 to each one of them. So 16 times 4. So I'm just coloring them. I do recommend that you get a gel press. It's not only good for holding these little pieces so I can color them. Of course, you could also use colored cardstock, but using my specialty paper, it's a little softer and works really well. But these little gel press are really nice. So on these, just like I do on the Queen Anne's lace, I'm going to spritz it. And then I'm going to take my small ball stylus and cup right in the center. And see, as I push down, it really gives a nice cup to it. Oops. Slipsies. So you get the idea. You're going to cup all of those and make sure that one's really nice and tight. And then you're going to just push it aside and let it dry. So you're going to color these little stamens. I'm using YG 8.3 for this variety. And the colors, you're going to be really excited because the colors go from white to a cream, several shades of pink from light to dark, even going into like a burgundy or a dusty rose. And then you've got the lavenders. And there's even a white one that has a beautiful purple center. So I'm coloring these all 5 pieces in this green, but just take notice of whatever variety you use as to what color the center is that holds your little flowers. Because some of them, I think on the packaging I did a burgundy colored one or something. It was a little bit brighter green for the center. So in addition to the gel press, if you have one of these speedball mats, it really is helpful. If you don't, you could use the molding pad. It's just a little, because this is so nice and firm. You know what, like what we did on the Love in the Mist, I'm cupping each one of those little pieces, and I've got it right side down. So the little round ends to these stamens, you want to go ahead and just press. And I've done that all the way around. Then I flip it over. And this is just optional, but I like to bring it together a little bit, so I'm just with the leaf tool here, I'm running a line down the center, not hitting those areas, but just like that. And I would do that to all 4 pieces. Then you've got the little round or roll-up stamen here, and you're going to also press down on those little rounded ends. And then grab your tweezers. Paint a little bit of glue right along the long end there. And then you're going to roll it up. So before I add the little flowerets, I'm going to take a fine line pen. This is Arteza A114, just because it's a nice color to go along with this shade of little floweret that goes in the center. Now I'm going to grab my piece, and this time I'm just putting a little bit of glue in make sure there's no glue on the end of my tweezer. Well, we do need to make sure the glue is wet. So I'm using Kids' Choice here, so there, now it's sticky. So you're going to put 2 on each one of those little ends. 1 to that side. And I'm just using the little detailed tweezers that are in the toolkit rather than the reverse tweezers. Kind of spin it around here a bit. And since there's 8 projections and you put 2 on each one gets 16. Okay, like I said, I've done these, and we're going to do the little center one when we place that on the flower. So let's now do the flowers. They are, I'm doing a light pink. This is R5.1 in Olo. So I'm coloring from the outside of the petal towards the center, leaving that center white. But like I said, you have a variety of colors, and I'm sure over the weeks when these are released that you're going to see my design team and myself show you bunches of colors that you can do these Astrantia in. I'm going to color both sides. And just because it's not a daisy, but because it's got petals like that, I do spritz it with a little bit of water. And then I'm going to, let me mop up some of this water. I'm also going to add a little bit of striations there on the front. You'll see as the petals come together, this makes a nice little detail that you can add to your flowers. Okay, so now taking it from, you're going to pinch towards the center there, and then pinch or twist that little outside area. You want to point just like that. In fact, I should get this one a little bit better. So what I'm doing is pinching around the tip of the tweezer, going to the point here, and twisting it so you get that nice point to the petal. So let's now do the flowers. They are, I'm doing a light pink. This is R5.1 in Olo. So I'm coloring from the outside of the petal towards the center, leaving that center white. But like I said, you have a variety of colors, and I'm sure over the weeks when these are released that you're going to see my design team and myself show you bunches of colors that you can do these Astrantia in. I'm going to color both sides. And just because it's not a daisy, but because it's got petals like that, I do spritz it with a little bit of water. And then I'm going to, let me mop up some of this water. I'm also going to add a little bit of striations there on the front. You'll see as the petals come together, this makes a nice little detail that you can add to your flowers. Okay, so now taking it from, you're going to pinch towards the center there, and then pinch or twist that little outside area. You want to point just like that. In fact, I should get this one a little bit better. So what I'm doing is pinching around the tip of the tweezer, going to the point here, and twisting it so you get that nice point to the petal. And we'll do that on this one too. So if you press down and then just twist, you get a nice point to your tip of your petal. Okay, so these now go on your molding pad, and you're going to take your medium ball stylus and just press in the center to get it to cup up, just like that. Now I'm going to add another little detail to mine, because on the ends of these, you'll, a lot of times, no matter what color you see, will have a little greenish tint to the ends. So I'm just taking, this is Pan Pastel Bright Yellow Green shade, and just taking a little, I think this is like a cosmetic applicator or something. You can find them in the drugstore. And I'm just tipping those ends with a little bit of green, as you can see. There we go. I'll use that again on the leaves, so we'll keep it out. Now it's time to put our project together. So I like, you don't have to, but I like to put mine together on the project. So I've just done a simple white background and embossed it with the Ode to a Poet embossing folder that's also out with this collection. When you've got a beautiful embossing folder, you don't need a lot of decoration because you don't want to cover up all that pretty embossing. So you're going to put, here's your large pieces first, and I'm going to use the small ball stylus to cup the center. Doesn't it look like a pincushion? It's just, there's a couple flowers that have this kind of look. Scabiosa is another one I could think of, but I just love the center. I first saw these when I was over in the UK. A lovely garden in Ondel had them growing, and I just had to come up with a way to create them. They're unusual and give a nice statement to your garden, whether it's on paper or in nature. So you did the two large ones first, and then the two smaller ones. And then you've got, oops, this little one here, and I'm going to kind of open them up a little bit. Some of the extra, you'll have some extras left over, and they're for this roll up. So you're just going to set them on the tip there. So you'll have about 5 or 6, I think. Maybe a few more. Just want to fill the top there. Well, you get a little bit of glue on your tweezer there. There we go. Set it right down in the center. Leaves, like I said, remind me a little bit of lupine, but because of the way they're figured, they're usually a very bright green. So I'm using a couple new colors from Olo. This is YG 1.7 and 1.6. And then I'm shading in with a 2.5. So if you start with a little bit of the darker center, and then you can flip it over and do that lighter. And then what I do, since I'm using a glass mat, I use some of that 1.6 and pick it up on my 2.5 so I can blend out that way. Gives you some lovely shading to be able to do that. If you've got a glass mat, it's really quite helpful. If you don't, you can use a nonstick pad to do the same thing. Oops, I want that in that color. Oops. Nope, just got it on my shirt. Nope, don't want that one. Get a little confused here. And then the other side, you can just color. It's nice using the specialty paper because with the Olos, they're so juicy. They do kind of bleed through and there's not a lot of coloring you still need to do. So bring in your leaf pad, and I am going to score using the leaf tool, coming down on the wrong side, each one of these leaves. And then I kind of pinch them in half so I can accentuate that fold line with some of the pan pastel. Really helps you to visualize the stem line. And then not crossing over the stem line, but you can add a few little vein marks on either side. And then these get pinched. And a little twist at the end to give them some shape, some three-dimension. Nothing's flat. And then you want to bring in your medium ball stylus and just kind of cup it up a bit to give it some shape. So let's add our leaves. Some glue right there in the center. Grab my tweezers here. I'll lift up on these petals. You want to tuck your leaves underneath if you can. Kind of pulling up on those petals a bit. And you can set as many leaves as you want. Make sure they're locked down. So also with this release are some foliage. I call it Poetic Foliage. And it's got a few new pieces, some leaves. And we're going to just set this under here. And we've got some hanging berries, so ones that drape down. I thought they'd be awfully nice to give a little bit of interest and texture there. And adding a quote. So the only thing we have to do is our ladybug. So I'm going to grab my R1.5. Oops. I just color her on a, this is an old art gum eraser. A little bit of Uniball black to outline her head. And right on the eraser, I take my small ball stylus and turn her upside down so you can cup her body. Add a little bit of glaze to her. Now it's finished. There's the Astrantia or Masterwort. I hope you like this one.